Hello and welcome to another video in my vintage electronics series, and this time it's going to be another radio. And I don't want to do too many radios, but I do want to build up a small personal collection. Now, some time ago I did a Bush VHF 61 radio for a friend, completely overhauled that so it could be used on a daily basis. And I was really taken with the quality of the sound on that. It was really deep, rich, vibrant sound, which was just fantastic. So I kind of fell in love with it. So I was looking for something similar, a Bush radio of that era, and I thought I'll go for it properly. And what I found was a Bush VHF 64, which in my opinion is the high end radio for that sort of mid 1950s Bush radio. And there are a few features that set it apart, and we'll go into those later. But let's just see how I get on with the refurb. So how do I go about this job? This I'm going to do is look at the schematic. And when you look at the schematic, it looks quite complex. But when you break it down, it's no different really to any other superhet receiver, high quality receiver of its generation. And I mean, there's a lot of peripheral inputs here, tape inputs and gram inputs. So a lot of it is focused around switching. So what we've got is a power supply based on the EZ81 valve, and there's also the tuning indicator, which is the Magic Eye based on the EM81. Then we go into an audio amplification stage, which is based on an EL84, and that is kicking out about 4 watts. Now, with the VHF 61 radio put together, that's about 2.5 watts, and that was loud. So no issue with the power on this one. Definitely going to be a loud set. We then come to the detector stage, which also incorporates an audio amplification stage, and that's based on the EABC80 valve. And then with high quality radios of the period, you get 2 intermediate frequency stages, both based on the EF89. And then you come into the RF stages, and that's based on the ECH81. And the FM is self-contained in a little shielded can or box. And the valve that's of focus around there is the ECC85. Those can be quite expensive to replace, so I hope that's okay. There's a slight modification. When you go into FM mode, the ECH81 adds in a third intermediate frequency stage. So all in all, very good radio design. Although the schematic looks complex, you just break it down into portions and it's not too bad really. Some of the features that set this radio apart are, and what attracted me as well, is the speaker system. You'll notice here there's actually 2 main speakers there, or woofers. These are actually tuned to different frequencies, and there's also an electrostatic tweeter there as well. So this 3-way system is designed to give a very broad frequency response, to give it some very high quality. So for a set of its period, 1957, they're introduced. I think it's very good. So what they need to do now is just carry on and do some visual inspection on the system. So looking at the front, the pop seems to work okay. Got a sense that this switch is working as designed. I can see the bass and treble seem to be working on the face of it. It's very dusty. The obvious thing here, this is tuning spindle spinning freely, not moving the dial at all. So I suspect the dial cord's broken in there. We'll have a look at the back later and find out. There's a few chips to the case. I want to restore the case as best as I can. I don't really have any skills or experience, so I'll have to learn. it's not going to be brand new, but I just want to make it look a lot smarter. This grill cloth is grubby. I think this has been in a very smoky environment, so I would like to try and clean that and try and get it a lot more uniform in appearance. So that's the front. We just need to have a look at the back now. So looking at the back, just peering inside, doesn't look too bad in there, but we need to get the back off. Back's fairly well intact. Obviously the mains cable here is broken, so that needs to be made safe before we do anything, and that will be replaced. So visually from the back, not too bad. It's just a question of going inside now. So just taking the back off. I think only 2 of the screws were original, so some of them weren't even binding into this at all. So I'll see if I can replace those. First visual indications are quite clearly that the dial cord is broken, so that needs to be replaced. The tuning for the FM looks to be intact. That's good, because that's quite a tricky assembly. There's a lot of dust, which will be cleaned out. Also as well, I've noticed some of this wiring is really crunchy. I'm just touching this, the insulation's dropping off, so hopefully there's not going to be too many wires to replace, but certainly these speaker cables need to be sorted before any power is applied. So next job really is to get it out of the chassis, give it a good clean, build a frame for it, and let's see where we are from there. So just turning the radio on its base, I noticed this access panel, which I've removed now, and it gives me a good idea of what needs to be done. It doesn't look too bad actually. I thought it'd be much more complex in terms of its layout. It's certainly better than the Bush VHF 61. Mind you, there's a few tricky bits to access. Thoughts here are, I'm looking at these capacitors. These are Hunt's multi-paper capacitors. I know there's lots of debate around capacitors, but really these paper capacitors from the mid-1950s aren't capacitors anymore. These are notoriously bad anyway, the Hunt's ones, and 80% of the ones I test are faulty, so they're going to be changed anyway. Remember, this is going into daily use, so I've got responsibility to my family and myself really to make this as safe as possible. So, and generally speaking, I do the electrolytics as well, and there's some electrolytics on these Bush capacitors which will most certainly be short, so they'll be changed as well. Quality of the cable in here doesn't look too bad. I will go through this in fine detail really just to work out what needs to be done. But yeah, just the visual inspections give me a good idea what needs to be done. The obviously dangerous cables I'll change now. Then I'll do some tests on the transformers, and the temptation then, if it all feels okay or measures okay, so I'll just bring it up slowly just to see how it gets on. So got the radio out the case, or the chassis out the case. Need a good clean. The wires on the underneath the chassis don't look too bad actually, and I'm inclined to leave those in place. Same with the rubber grommets actually, these are in fairly good condition. This is in contrast to pretty much all the wiring on the top side of the chassis. I think that's really taken the heat and it's dried out and it's all brittle, so I will be replacing all of that. I have noticed this wax paper capacitor in particular is black, and it's just wax everywhere, so I'll be changing that along with all the other wax capacitors. There's a electrolytic here which is covered in gunk, and I know that one's notoriously bad for going short anyway. So as a matter of precaution, I will be changing all the electrolytic capacitors. I know some people don't like doing that, but this really is from the 1950s, and it's obvious that the radio has been well used. So I want to make sure it's safe for daily use. So we'll be changing these capacitors and the can on the side. I'll leave that in place. There's plenty of room on the underneath of the chassis for it. So wax paper capacitors will be swapped out, and these notoriously bad Hunt's capacitors, the plastic on these tends to be brittle, and they are a molded paper capacitor, and really a capacitor, paper capacitor from 1950s is no longer a capacitor. Virtually every single one, about 80% of these, when I test them, are faulty. So I will be changing those. And the inclination is to actually test the radio as I go along, so I'll make sure it powers up safely. There are some other safety checks they need to do, and we may have a fault on this. It may come to life slowly. We'll see what happens during the process of the repair. So nothing too much to report on the top side of the chassis. The valves, I'll take those out and clean the sockets, and I take it for granted that they're working at the moment. I'll test them if I need to, but I'm inclined just to test those in the radio. Concerned about the looseness of the tuning and FM box and tuning capacitor, so that needs to be sorted. I can't really work out what's going on there, but we will in time. There's another loose element here. Looks like it's got a screw missing, so we'll check that out. Looks like cables have been forced in there. It's just worked its way loose over time. So top of the chassis, yeah, not too bad. And just looking at the case, this is where some of the problems start. All this cabling is just brittle. Obviously the wiring is okay, the installation is just rubbish. So I'm going to replace all of that. It's come away from the main chassis quite well. What I'm thinking of doing, actually, I need to design a cradle really for the radio. I'm not sure if I'm going to include the speaker mechanism. I might just temporarily wire up a jumper in system where we can get the two together quite quickly. So I need to think about that. At the moment, I'm just going to clean the case out, and I'll probably take this face plate out with the speakers on as a mounting, and just work on that separately. So I'm in the process of stripping down the radio, and I was taking the speakers out, and I noticed this cone is actually split at the very edges here. This bitumen type material has gone pretty brittle, and I think that's what's caused the split. So I'm going to have a go repairing this. The alternative is to get a modern replacement of a similar frequency response, but I don't really want to do that. And I'm going to try and reinforce it with tissue paper and PVA glue to see if that will actually work. Should. That's quite a well-known way of actually repairing cones. So I'll try that. Getting the radius or the radii for these little pieces was quite easy because it's got this ring which has come off there, so it's quite easy to cut. So I'll just see how I get on with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run some dilute PVA around the edge here, first of all. We should make the quarter curves a little bit smaller, and then I'll just have a go A little bit of tissue paper in that corner. I want to get right into the corner. It's going to be one of those fiddly jobs, I know. Okay, what I'll do is just tamp that down with a brush. Get into the, make sure it's got a good bond. Whoop. Quite a thick bit there. That's working quite well. Making sure that actually binds to the paper cone. Okay, that's looking pretty good, and I'll just carry on all the way around there and let that set. So that's the coat of tissue paper put on. I've made the band a little bit thicker to cover all the black area, the I guess it's bitumen type area, and I'm fairly pleased with that. I'm going to let that set, and then I'll go over with a thicker coat of PVA glue just to give it some resilience and spring. So that's the speaker repaired. It's an effective repair. It's not aesthetically the most pleasing, but it really does do the job very well. The tissue paper's dried white, but it's actually made that area very strong, and it does sound very good. What I've done here with the speaker surround, I've put some silicone sealant in there, flexible silicone adhesive, which will hopefully emulate the suspension needed for the original build of the speaker. This is definitely tuned towards the mid to high frequency range. I've tested the other speaker and that works very well. That seems to tail off around the 400 hertz or a little bit higher than that. So it's definitely tuned to the bass. So really the next job now is to get this chassis into the frame and get the speakers mounted appropriately as well, and we'll carry on with the testing. So remounting the speakers, you can't actually see the repair and sound very good. So very pleased with that. So I'll leave part one there. I haven't done any real repair work as yet, so it may come across as a little bit dull. But the strip down inspection of the radio was a vital part of the process, and it took quite a lot of time. What I'll do in part two, just carry on, see how we get on with the repairing process. I haven't finished the radio yet, so I'm kind of doing these as I go along. So it may be a complete bust. I just don't know. I guess that's life, really. Also, I'm on a learning curve as well, so you may see things that are probably incorrect. And, you know, I'm going to learn by my own mistakes, and I'm going to put my mistakes out there so people can learn from those. But that's part of the process as well. It's fun. It's a hobby at the end of the day. So I want to enjoy myself and I want to learn. So if you do like these videos, please do like and subscribe. That really does help me a lot. And I'll catch you in part two.